When Steven makes it to Evergrande League HQ, he's informed that he'll have up to 10 days for recuperation and preparation before challenging the Elite Four. Also, when he passes through the gates, he'll only be allowed to take a limited number of healing items so that he can't heal boost his way to victory. Steven takes a day to clear his mind, but decides that, after all his team's training, a few more days won't make a difference. He proceeds with his challenge, and handily beats the first two elites. Phoebe nearly finishes him, but Simon, the fourth guy, proves no threat either. When all's said and done, Steven stands at the champion's door with a mostly functional team. He's out of heals, but the elites provide him a couple gifts. I know I just breezed over like a quarter of the story right there, but it's mostly battle choreography. Since there's not much to say for that, I'll focus instead on the healing policy Wolflin instituted. If I were a corrupt champion and wanted to make sure nobody ever dethroned me, I might have set it up like this. Run the gauntlet of 4 battles to prove you're worthy of my attention, I'd decree. I'm setting a limit on healing, so you can't just power your way through with infinite mana. You'll even be permitted bonus items at the elite's discretion. It sounds reasonable on its face, as I intend it to sound. But what if the challenger had a team that could whoop my ass, given the benefit of full health? Well, then obviously he should be the champion. But the difference between us is that I wasn't handicapped with a supply ration. Even with 100 max revives, the challenger's statistically unlikely to win all 4 matches against the strongest trainers in Hoenn besides me. If the matches are supposedly competitive, it's like flipping a coin 4 times and getting heads each time. In the best possible scenario for the challenger, he ends up fighting me on an even footing, which should be the case anyway. This is all assuming that mid-battle healing is off the table, as is tradition. Just think of all the trainers who should have, and would have, been champion long ago. But because they were whittled down by a gauntlet of mini-champs beforehand, the current champion got to take on their teams in a severely softened state. Of course, if we're just going by the procedure of the handheld games, skill and balance all go out the window. Items be damned, it's a matter of level, and a wise challenger would delay his one chance at the throne until grinding his team to level 100. And he'd better, because what's stopping the league from pulling the same stunt? Level restrictions don't apply to them, so far as I know. There's theoretically such an unbridgeable gap of power between the 8th gym leader and the Elite Four's vanguard that you'd be crazy not to delay your challenge for like 10 years. Just overcoming one elite should merit the title of Pokemon Master all by itself. Whew, boy. That went longer than expected. I guess it's been floating in my subconscious for some time now. I've strayed from Wolflin's setup to ramble on the Pokemon lore itself, so it's time to pull back. Before I move on to Drake and post-Drake, there's one thing I want to touch on with the Phoebe match. At the end, when Steven wins, Glacia comments that the match, quote, wasn't technically illegally conducted, so the victory counts. Actually, Steven ought to have been counted victorious by default the moment Phoebe lost control of her animals and 2 came out at once in a singles match. That's grounds for disqualification. Never mind the fact that a trainer was personally assaulted. As a reader, I didn't put all that much blame on Phoebe, given the context, but we need to be consistent. The league operates under strict rules. By their own mandates, every Pokemon after Aggron should have been healed with League medicine, and not Steven's limited kit. And if Steven had loosed the rest of his team on the rogue ghosts all at once, out of self-preservation, he'd have been well within his rights. After all the locations where there'd been a referee, why of all times was there not one here with an unstable novice? If I'd been Steven, and I'd ended up losing that match instead of winning, you bet your ass I'd be calling a lawyer. You can tell I'd been quite invested in this story. So, the champion. Turns out it's the fourth guy you face in the games before fighting Steven himself. That's fitting. He honestly struck me as a man on par with Lance. As with all the Pokemon battles in this story, Wolflin narrated it with fitting tone and appropriate pace. It held me rapt with attention, and though I foresaw how the match would end, I still enjoyed reading as it played out. I'm not sure what more to say. Wolflin's plots aren't always airtight, but he sure knows how to narrate. The story winds down as I imagined it would. I figured that the champion would get his own luxurious quarters, be responsible for paperwork, need fitting for an appropriate uniform, address the public, etc. I imagined that it would also be the champion's duty to sit on a board of directors when it came to refining league policies, but it didn't quite get around to that. Not really the point, of course. By now, Wolflin was simply world-building all the sights and wonders that Steven witnessed in his new role. You were supposed to empathize with his confusion and insecurity, and to that, I'd say mission accomplished. Steven eventually adapts. Not fully, but you can tell that he's gonna be okay. He's got good people around him, and he's grown in stature and confidence since first starting out with Beldum. Oh, right, and obviously his Pokemon are with him as ever-present moral supports, especially Metagross. We can't forget about that. Also, his dad shows up and passes on his mother's silver ring, telling him she would have been proud. That part felt a little out of place to me. Like, I don't know, Mama Stone was virtually non-existent throughout this whole novel, but now we're discussing her? And Joseph's pretty awkward about it too, so there's not a whole lot we can glean from this. If I was supposed to feel something here, it was too little too late. This isn't really a story about biological family. Wallace and Juan make their final appearances for this story, though they have a presence in other stories Wolflin's written as well. Here, it's a bit of closure, just to show that Wallace has come to properly respect Steven, and his manners are improved. One can only hope that he extends the same courtesy towards those who aren't champions. Also, it's implied that Wallace fancies other guys, though I don't think anyone needed much convincing on that one. Stereotypes wouldn't be stereotypes if they weren't consistently reinforced. When I finally got to the end of reading, I thought about how Steven couldn't be much younger in this story than he looks when you fight him in the game. It means his reign as champion was relatively short. Not blue short, but if you didn't beat him, he was bound to get replaced by Wallace soon enough. I'd say that's a bit of a melancholy thought, but regardless, Steven can live the rest of his life with the knowledge that he was once champion of Hoenn. And it's really not a bad life that he's going back to. The former life is gone. His Pokemon team is with him until death, and they're more than just combat fighters. Even when his father inevitably passes and he becomes the new president of his company, Steven's already done about as much with his Pokemon as he could ever have dreamed to do. Ah, but there's always room for more. The company had already invented technology for resurrecting Pokemon fossils. Someday, they may just break ground in their other pursuits, such as reproducing Pokemon dreams or developing devices for talking with Pokemon. Remember those mentions in the games? It's just a couple reminders that Steven's story continues beyond the throne, and we haven't even touched on the Mega Evolution stuff. I looked up the list of Pokemon champions online in accordance to popularity. There are different lists depending on which site you go to, but Steven's almost always ranks second to whoever got first. I'm a Lance fanboy myself, but I can tell that a lot of people were happy to see their champion represented in literature. If you guys want more, Wolfland's been working on more, so I recommend you head over to his library. Link is in the description below. As the tradition goes, it's rating time. Once again, I'm gonna give a 7 out of 10. Wolfland's a natural with narration, and it's easy to go along with just about any thread he thinks to spin. At least for me it is. The order of events was cleverly done, and I like how self-contained each chapter still managed to be. That said, I've made it no secret that I think there's room for improvement. On a grammatical level, it's mostly flawless, but you guys may have noticed a pattern in my inflection of voice, specifically with the plethora of introductory phrases and clauses. I noticed they recurred frequently. Leaning into the driving wind, pressing forward, bringing a hand to his chin, as if to answer, as he waded through, as the trainer moved to follow, etc. It's nothing major, but it stood out to me after a while. More importantly, I'm willing to accept that the Steven presented in this story has what it takes to be champion, but I need more evidence. I need to know that Steven is driven by more than just a desire to adventure for as long as he can before he has to work for a living. I need to see that the training he employs puts his team leaps and bounds ahead of the average Joe's methodology. I need convincing that he's been busting ass for long enough that he has a fraction of a chance against a Dragon Master at least 30 years his senior in experience. And believe me, I know how grating it can be to work so diligently on a story for so long only to hear, upon finishing it, that improvement is needed. But at the same time, here is a jewel amongst works of fanfiction that has already received a lot of happy replies from grateful readers. It was seen, as is, worthy of a summer's labor. It's not as good as Phoenix Rising, but still a small joy in the world that makes life a little better for existing. Well, I have more to say, but I'm gonna leave it off here. Thanks for joining me, everyone. Until next time.